Hold hands and close your eyes. It's midnight, and you're listening to the Ghost Story Guys. Welcome to the Ghost Story Guys. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Ian Gibbs.
And this is a show where we talk about spooks, specters, and all the other things watching us from the shadows beyond the campfire. Some conversations only make sense after the sun is set, and this is most definitely one. Thank you for tuning in. This is episode 35, and we're coming to you from that tiny mountain cabin you dream about but can never quite reach. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing well, Brennan. How are you?
I am good. I'm happy to be back. Happy to be back from Revelstoke.
Tell me about Revelstoke.
Oh man, it was a quick trip.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't been back at all this year, so it was nice. 4 hours of live radio between Revelstoke Jim's show on Tuesday and my show on Wednesday.
See, that just sounds really stressful.
the live radio thing?
Yeah, no, I couldn't.
Not
do
for
that.
you, eh?
No.
It was a great trip. It was a quick trip, but I did actually have something interesting happen paranormally. Usually what I do there is I go for walks or I drive around at night. And I went out with a friend of mine who is sort of I like to say a bit of a dead end as far as the paranormal goes. She has no sensitivity whatsoever.
Well, God bless her.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
We went for a drive the first night I got there, and I noticed that it was really quiet out. You know, there weren't many people on the street.
Yeah.
It was just unusual.
Weird.
And I thought, man, it's dark. And now, of course, it's nighttime. And
that does happen at nighttime.
Yeah, it does happen. But it had been raining, so the streets were shiny, and so the clouds would be low. That you expect
Sure.
that.
You're in the mountains.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So my friend and I we went for a drive. Now, of course, the Arrow Lakes are the area I always talk about in Revelstoke as being quite paranormal.
Yeah.
And you know, recently I was having a chat with someone who told me that they get splitting headaches whenever they visit Revelstoke and go in that direction.
Oh wow.
Yeah. To them, they said sometimes it happens when you cross the bridge. Sometimes it happens once you're higher up. Ordinarily, I drive all over town,
right,
including through Arrow Heights and down by the Arrow Lakes. I got to the bridge which crosses the Yellow Silhouette River, which technically marks the beginning of Arrow Heights. You go up a hill, and that's where you start.
Yep.
And as I approached the bridge, I heard a voice in my head screaming at me to stop.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm being stupid. I'm being dramatic.
You know, you think after all these years you would actually pay attention to that voice. But no.
You'd think.
You'd think.
You would be wrong.
But no, yeah, exactly.
So I crossed the bridge.
Yeah.
And it is so dark. Now, the streetlights are on.
Yeah.
A lot of streetlights. It's quite bright.
Yeah.
It is so dark. It is so oppressive.
Wow.
I immediately pull a U-turn and go back the other direction.
Wow.
I have never once done that. I lived there for 24 years.
What did your friend say when you did that?
She asked, she said, "What's up?" And I said, "It's not a good." I just said, "It's not a good night to be up in Arrow Heights."
Right.
She knows not to ask too many questions beyond that. So we turned around and usually still I'll drive around in Revelstoke with her till midnight, sometimes 1, just shooting the breeze, catching up. We only see each other a couple times a year.
Yeah.
I couldn't stay out any longer.
Wow.
I dropped her off at probably about 11:15. I was at home by 11:30. I usually stay with family when I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And this sounds ridiculous. The night was so oppressive. The darkness was so close, so claustrophobic, that I was afraid to get out of the car.
Wow.
Never in my life have I experienced that.
That's crazy.
Where I was afraid to get out of the car. I actually called a friend of mine just to be in touch with someone for a few minutes while I went from the car to the house.
Wow.
Yeah. I shouldn't say never. Very rarely have I had to do that. And what's interesting, the moment I crossed that bridge, both you and another one of my friends texted me at the same time asking how I was doing.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, we text, every couple of days?
Yeah, depending on.
Generally.
Yeah.
And I usually do that during the day. So I don't know what was going through my head, but I do remember that point thinking, I need to check in on Brennan. That's what came into my head. Not, Brennan's in danger. No, it was a definite must-do kind of thing.
Yeah, so. And it was, another one of my friends did the same thing.
Weird.
The next day, I went for a walk in the daytime, had breakfast with a friend, and I went down to the ball fields. Right. The ball fields are next to the Columbia River. And the Columbia River...
Okay, this is weird. I'm sorry, seriously. You said I went to the ball fields. I saw, like a road, a little embankment, a ball field, and a river right there. Really? And then mountains going up the other side.
Well, that's exactly what it is, because across...
I swear to God.
Really?
I got the entire picture. before. As soon as he said ball fields, boom, I had the picture in my head. I could see it.
Interesting.
That's weird.
That is weird. Maybe
Sorry.
I've showed you a picture before?
No, why would you show me a picture? I've never seen any pictures of Revelstoke.
What? I've never sent you a picture, aside from that one that
the
night.
dark one. But no, that's it.
Fascinating.
That's weird.
That is weird.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, no. So
Please
I
go on.
went down the hill. Of course, it's a weekday, so there's not going to be a lot of people down there anyways.
Right.
But it was, again, pretty empty. Not totally empty, but pretty empty. And as I got closer to what's called the Green Belt, which is this paved sort of walking path that cuts through the wetlands, which is quite isolated.
Mm-hmm.
As I got closer, I felt this. It's again, it sounds ridiculous, but I felt this sort of almost like a magnetic force pushing me away.
Right.
Like there was noise coming from there. Like there was loud music coming from there. But there's no music. I can just feel the force.
Yeah.
And I was going to walk the whole path because I've been trying to walk a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make myself go down that way. Something just told me, no, this is not a real good idea.
So do you think things are worse in good old Revelstoke, or do you think you're just more sensitive to it?
I think something has changed.
Right.
I think something has shifted. I don't know if it's permanent or what, but something is different. That night, however, this is where it gets really interesting. That night, did not go out. I was staying
Which is highly unlike you.
Highly unusual.
Yeah.
Usually every night I go for at least a walk or a drive. I like being out in the nighttime.
Yeah.
I had a hard time getting myself out of the room I stay in.
Wow.
And then I went downstairs, made some food, and then at one point the family member I was staying with said, "Oh, there are 2 planes in the sky." And this is about 9:30 at night.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I didn't even want to get up and go look. But I went, and this family member pointed to 2 lights, and one was moving away to the south, and one stopped.
What?
And she said, "Well, I thought they were planes, but that one has stopped now."
That's weird.
And it's not moving. And I said, "Well, is it a helicopter maybe?" She said, "Oh, maybe." So she happened to have binoculars there, so she pulled up binoculars, looked, and she said, "It doesn't look like a helicopter." And then she said, "That's weird," and walked away. So I grabbed the binoculars and I looked. Dude, it looked like a neon white triangle.
Wow.
I've never seen a fucking helicopter look like that.
No.
And this was not so far away that we're talking, telescope to see it.
Right.
This is not in the sky. It's above us.
Right.
Like considerably up. Like there could be a helicopter in terms of height, but close enough that with binoculars, I should have been able to make out something. It looked like a white triangle, a neon white triangle.
That is weird.
And I put the binoculars down, and I thought I don't want to know anymore.
Good.
Yep, exactly. I went back to the living room, kept doing. I was working on some stuff for my radio show the next day.
Yeah.
That's it. The end.
Wow.
Zero interest in learning more.
Wow.
And could not make myself go out that night.
Well, must have been a reason.
I think so. So
wow.
It was a great trip. Did the radio, but there's a different aspect to the town that I've noticed before. And I don't know if it's a transitory thing or what, but it was fascinating.
Interesting.
I'm hoping to get back there once more before before winter.
Before the snow falls.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't like it's a long drive. I don't like driving in the winter.
No.
Moving on, this episode we decided to cover some listener stories. We had so many backed up, so many great stories that people had submitted to us.
Amazing.
We really wanted to share some.
Yeah.
These run the range of paranormal experiences, including, and I believe it's the final story we'll be doing tonight, an update on the house that one of our listeners has been building.
Yes. Yeah.
Where things have not gone the way we'd hoped they'd go.
No.
Which is a little worrying.
No, but I'm really, really grateful she updated us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so when we come back from the break, listener stories. Welcome back. So as we said before the break, this episode is going to be all about listener stories. And I love these because there's never one theme.
No.
It's always a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's funny because when we started this, I didn't think anyone would actually send us stories, period. Never mind having enough to do a whole episode.
Or more than a whole episode.
Yeah, we really had enough, I think.
Our cup is overflowing
for
now.
2, yeah. Which is not to say you should stop.
No.
Please keep them coming because the thing is, we sort of, for those of you who've been listening for a while, you'll notice that we've taken this sort of hard right into just storytelling. I shouldn't say just storytelling, but into storytelling. And the thing is that one of the reasons we've done that is because, one, stories are very entertaining.
Yeah.
And two, something Ian and I are always trying to do is figure more of this out.
Yeah.
Is understand more of all this weirdness that's happening.
And hypothesize.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
And every story someone gives us is
Adds
more data
more.
for the machine.
Exactly. That's why, I mean, this sounds stupid, but it's like I've had fish tanks for years.
Right, of course.
But if I come across a fish tank book, I'm going to pick it up and flip through it because you can always learn more.
Your whole fish tank thing fascinates me.
I know, it's weird.
It's
weird. It's weird, I know.
It's not weird. It's because I don't really know anyone who does fish tanks anymore.
Well, no, because it's like an ancient art, practically.
Everyone's got, like, what do you get? The Tamagotchi? I guess Tamagotchi.
Yeah,
about 30 years
Tamagotchis
out
are
of
too.
date. But
you know what? It's sad. I ran into a guy who was closing down his pet shop, and he said that to me. He goes, everyone has iPads and game consoles. Kids don't want pets anymore. And I was like, oh, man.
That's when you think about it, it's kind of tragic because that's saying we don't need to look after anything living. We have technology.
Yes. Yeah.
But no. So like we said, this is just
always learning, always absorbing more.
Yeah. No, that's it.
Yeah.
So this first story comes from Andrea, and I believe Andrea has been. I think she sent us something before, or is this her first?
No, this one was her first one.
Okay.
What I liked about Andrea is I totally identify with her.
Right.
Coming from an ultra religious family,
of course,
that doesn't accept any of this, and she's kind of stuck going, but wait. It's real.
Yeah, that's it. Regardless of whether or not you think it's happening, it's happening. Yeah. Well, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. So Andrea wrote in and gave us this story. I've been listening since your first episode and have always wanted to write in. I'm a preacher's daughter who has always been taught everything paranormal is either demons or angels and not to talk about it. So it can be hard not to feel crazy when sharing a story.
Honestly, my family's about as far away from preachers as you can get, and I still feel crazy.
Well,
sometimes telling a story.
I think people generally don't want to talk about it because it means it's real.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and I totally understand that, but it can be very frustrating. And that was part of the reason I was so excited to write a ghost book, because it wasn't until I read my first ghost story book of genuine people's stories that I went, oh, I'm not crazy.
Right.
I remember being about 14 or something and reading it and going, oh, it's not just me. This is a real thing. Other people experience it.
Right. I'm hoping that moment will hit me one day.
Yeah.
But please continue.
I'll make a super long story as short as I can. My mother and I are sensitive to paranormal things, even though she interprets things differently than I do. For some reason, my family has always had paranormal things happen, in which my parents made me feel like I was going crazy till they admitted to things when I was older. My parents' house, in Brennan's voice, LOL, is most definitely haunted.
I don't know.
You don't get it?
No.
That is absolutely one of your phrases.
Most definitely haunted?
Is most definitely haunted.
Really?
Yes.
I do that.
All the time.
Okay. I learned something today.
My family is the longest owner who stayed in the house. The house sat empty for years. We moved in 2001, and although there were things happening around us before moving there, it's nothing like what's happened in that house. All we know about the history is that one of the richest families that lived in the town at the time built it, but for some reason never lived in it that we know of. He also built several other houses in town for friends and family around when the town was first growing from a country Cajun town to a city, 1974, I think. If I remember right, he actually lived in a nice hotel in town and not the house. For some reason, he built the house like a fortress. It almost looks like a castle in a nice, normal neighborhood. He built the third and second floor with concrete floors, which is really strange. We found out during renovations that he put steel X-like anchors in the walls for support. We guess. No builder can explain it. It has all gates, like I said, and had bars on the windows. There's also an iron Lindbergh gate at the top of the stairs. My family took some of the gates down, but now have added more gates, since things have gotten crazy. Each entrance into the house or yard has a large iron keypad gate. They have a very good alarm system, cameras in and outside of the house. They lock the Lindbergh gate every night and sleep with guns everywhere. The last few years they've gotten more paranoid, and with me living 2 hours away and them always pretending that nothing's happening, I don't know exactly what's happened the last few years.
Just to jump in for a sec, that sounds terrifying.
It really does.
I got tense reading that or listening to you read that.
Yeah.
That just seems like that's not a healthy way to live.
No.
Yikes.
My husband didn't believe in the paranormal, but now he says that house is cursed. And even though it's a really nice large 3-story house my parents want to give to us when they retire and downsize, my husband does not want it, nor do I, honestly. Like I said, my family chalks everything up to demons, angels, very sneaky criminals, or just ignore it till someone breaks down and talks about it. Last night, I had a dream that my special needs sister who lives with them texted me, quote, "Do you know anything about angels? Call me ASAP, end quote. I woke up this morning and called my sister. My mom picked up and we realized no one had texted me. My mom finally broke down and told me it was strange I called asking about angels because last night their cameras went off at 2 a.m. Also, the motion sensor floodlight that's about 1.5 to 2 feet away from the camera went off at the same time. Now, my mom has only admitted a few paranormal things to me in my life. One time, I house sat the house and stayed alone, even though I swore I never would. I didn't last all night, and I left. My mom finally admitted she doesn't stay alone either, and she sees gray figures that she said sometimes seem like angels, sometimes demons, maybe shadow people. I have so many stories about that house from when I lived with them. The worst event I witnessed was when a prophet came to pray over the house, one of many. They went to the mother-in-law's suite. The door in the video is the mother-in-law's door to the pool. The prophet said something crazy like my dad pissed off some big demons because he was preaching overseas a lot. I was kicked out of the room after that and didn't come back down till I heard screaming. One of my older sisters, I'm the youngest by 7 and 10 years, suddenly went violent, stating how we were all going to die. Of course, we all started counseling after that. Apparently, my sister had been having dreams of locking us in the house and setting it on fire.
Jesus.
Yeah. We moved her somewhere else for a while, and she's never been like that again.
Well, that seems like a good call.
Yeah. But upsetting that the house could have that much of an influence on it.
No kidding.
This house is always breaking. Fires, flooding from pipes, roofs caving in, and especially wasps, which for years had different specialists say they couldn't figure out where or why. My parents are older now and spent most of our money on this house and their health. Since we moved in, everyone is always getting hurt or sick. My dad has had several neck and back surgeries and other family members as well. Before I moved 7 hours away for college, I kept feeling like someone was watching me while I slept. At some points, I saw a dark figure in the doorway. All I could make out was the size and what looked like a smile. Not a good smile. I can't explain it. I've always seen random shapes and shadows there. Once after a night of seeing a shadow, I woke up with strange marks on my arm. One night, I heard talking in the kitchen. I swore someone broke into our house because I didn't know the voices. I was dumb and decided to hide and listen. Finally, I ran in there, and no one was there. I ran into my parents' room and told them, and of course we just prayed, and they went to sleep while I shook in bed. Random doors will lock. Things will be taken and sometimes never seen. You can hear people walking when no one is there. Phones always cut out or make weird noises. TVs cut off. Even with new electrical, we'll still get strange power surges. We catch strange things on the cameras all the time. Once my father was in Indonesia and had me drive 2 hours because he kept saying what looked like a man in the house on the camera. Nothing was there.
This is a hell of a place.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, because we've heard about haunted houses before.
Not this much.
No, this is...
No, and catching things on camera?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm getting chills.
I know.
It's this, whatever it is, does not want that house there.
No. We've heard whispers about strange things. Once my mom heard something whisper, "Get out," when she was in the attic.
Well, that's pretty direct.
She just doesn't go up there at all anymore. The only person who does now is my husband. I once had a very detailed dream where I was seeing through something's eyes as it tried to get into the house and was watching us. I could feel the hate. My parents are moving out in a couple months to pretty much gut the house again and quote-unquote fix it. I really hope they find peace at a new rental house and they don't move back in. Because after so many fixes and profits, it's still the same. That's the most I've ever told anyone about the house at one time, and I feel scared/crazy even typing it.
Wow. That's a lot. I mean, Andrea, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I hope you don't mind just saying this is in Louisiana.
Yeah.
This house. And I've spent some time in Louisiana. It's got some old magic there.
Well, I think it's all the water and the swamps. And,
yeah, oh, definitely.
You know, it's just, and it's different. But I'm fascinated by the history of this house.
Right.
That the man would build it. He would put so much extra into it.
Yeah.
And then never live there.
Yeah, that
says a lot.
Well, that's it, right?
And bars on the windows.
And the weird X support thing? No, all of it is just it's
weird.
There's a few things, too, that remind me of things I've heard about. I mean, I've never actually heard of the man on the video thing. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's truly incredible.
Yeah.
But the idea of voices.
Yeah.
That's happened to me at different points.
Yeah,
We've talked about on the show.
Yeah, me too.
But just never in a cluster like that.
And all the wasps and the plumbing and the electricals and the phone cutting out and oh my God, I couldn't live there.
No, it sounds like they can't live.
Well, it just must be hell for her growing up there and her mom living there because her mom's sensitive to stuff. I can't imagine. You would be on edge, if not terrified. You would be on edge all the time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised they've had health issues.
No,
that is fascinating. Please keep us updated, Andrea.
Yeah, please do.
And,
I would love to hear what happens when they move out and see if their lives are different.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
Yeah,
because that does not sound like a great place to be.
No.
Actually, one last thing about Louisiana. I may have told the story on the air before, but I had a dream premonition once about being in Louisiana. I had a dream in which I was here in Revelstoke. I'm sorry, here in Victoria. Oh boy. And driving around in the daytime, which is unusual because I really don't like driving around in the day. But in the dream, I come around a corner, and instead of coming around to the coast like I expected, I come around to this rural scene where there is some kind of tall plant in fields.
Right.
And there's a farmhouse, and then there's a road that continues off in front of me to the horizon. And then there's a road that continues off to my right that cuts through the large stalks of whatever it is.
Right.
And in the dream, I'm so overcome by the feeling of supernatural presence, I crash the car. I'm so overcome, I can't even cope. And the dream went on from there, but the rest of it's not relevant. However, when I was in Louisiana back in 2015, I was driving through, I want to say near the town of Thibodaux.
Right.
And I was told there's this one valley, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's a valley road. And I'd heard it was haunted. So I started driving towards that place, 'cause I was curious, and I come around a corner. There's that place.
No.
Tall, whatever. I don't know if it was sugarcane or whatever, but it's tall.
Wow.
The road goes off to the horizon, turns, and sure enough, I had to turn right. So I followed the road that kind of cut through all the plants. Within, 30, 40 seconds, I felt this incredible weight on my chest. Like I was being crushed, and I thought, this is how it ends. Got the big clutcher in Louisiana.
This is where the jammer happens.
Exactly, the jammer. But no, then I realized, I come around a corner, there's slave cabins.
Oh, wow.
All down the road. And I realized this has got nothing to do with me.
No.
But they're still there.
Yeah, of course they are. And the anger is still there.
Yeah. But Louisiana is a funny place.
Yeah. Wow. Great story, though. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So next one is from Caleb. And Caleb had some really kind words for Luke before I get started on the story. He says, please tell Luke he is incredible, and the info/stories he finds are f***ing awesome. And yeah, he's not wrong. All right, so this is Caleb's story. My buddy owns a funeral home in Kansas City, and I started working part-time for him about a year ago. He had worked as a funeral director for quite some time, but I never fully understood what he did until I started this gig with him. For those that aren't familiar, funeral directors deal with not only grieving families, but the complete preparation of a cadaver beforehand, dressing, draining fluids from the body, etc. I had no idea exactly what he did, and I have a much bigger appreciation for what he does now. Staying at a funeral home alone is not in my line of work. One day I was asked to help come clean the funeral home and tidy up anything that needed doing. Typically I would work with my friend to get things done quicker, but this time he told me I would be working alone, as he had business to attend to elsewhere. I was hesitant when he told me this because, as stated before, I have a hard time taking in this line of work when done alone. All the same, I agreed to work the day alone without him. I started off by vacuuming the main area where a funeral service would typically take place. He had a speaker where I could play music while doing that, so I wouldn't be as paranoid. All was going well, until it happened. As I was vacuuming, I felt the touch of 4 fingertips on my back. Now, I was wearing a hooded sweatshirt and figured it was that, but then reconsidered as this touch felt much different. I instantly turned off the vacuum and ran to the office space where I hoped I would be somewhat safe. Yeah, right. So I proceeded to call my friend and explain to him what happened. Of course, he claimed that I was crazy and I should just keep working. Typical friend. Work for me for free. I tried to convince him that this was not suitable for me to continue working as my anxiety levels were off the charts. Nonetheless, he told me to keep going and just ignore it. So I did. About 5 minutes after that phone call, the power went out in the entire funeral home. Oh, honey, no.
No. That's when I would walk out the door, lock the door, and go home.
Oh, yeah.
And send a text message. Sorry, power's out. Had to go home.
Yep.
No, I just wouldn't. No.
No, it's not happening.
When I read the next part, I was like, oh, sweet Jesus.
At that point, I stopped everything and ran outside where I knew nothing could happen to me. That's my man. I called him again, hoping he would understand why I could no longer work without electricity. He proceeded to tell me that I needed to check the breakers and find out if any of them were tripped during the outage.
Nope.
Where would one expect the breakers to be?
Mm-hmm.
The basement.
Mm-hmm.
As in the basement where bodies were kept in coolers and embalming happened.
Mm-hmm.
My gut told me no.
Yep.
Absolutely not. But for the sake of working and making sure he had a professional-looking business, I agreed. Caleb, you're a better friend than me.
He is.
As he texted me the location of the breakers, I headed toward the stairs to check. On my way there, I heard 3 loud bangs come from the basement that sounded like someone trying to escape from a room down there.
Nope.
There were no doors that could be accessed from the basement from outside where anyone could get in. I left without questioning whether or not I should call him to confirm. Now, mind you, my friend who owns a funeral home is one that I would consider a brother. I would do anything for him. But dealing with the paranormal, here I draw the line. I promised him that that day forward, I would never work there alone again.
Yes. No. Not going to happen.
No, that's nuts.
No. And I have been, I think I've told that story before about, I had a youth event in a funeral home. Didn't I?
No.
Red Deer, Alberta. I was asked to come do the music at a youth event. So I went up there and they said, oh, the youth event is in our brand new church hall across the street. And it was a funeral home. And they'd only cleared out literally 24 hours before.
Oh, man.
So the girls were all sleeping in the old funeral chapel.
Oh.
And the guys were all sleeping downstairs in the embalming room. The embalming table was still there. There were still some fake flowers lying around.
Oh,
the
man.
refrigerators were all there. The sink was, designed so you could tip someone's head back in it and clean their hair. And I did not feel happy there.
I'm shocked.
I mean, I was there with a group, so it made it a little bit better. I certainly couldn't have done what Caleb did.
No.
But my theory, people die. They don't know they're dead. They know something is very wrong, and they follow their bodies.
Oh.
Because they know there's going to be a funeral. Their family will be there. Everyone will be there. For some of them, I think they hang around sometimes either until that happens or until they're buried, and then very few of them still hang out in the graveyard. I don't think of graveyards typically as very haunted places.
No, nor I.
But I do think there are a couple people who they don't know what else to do. They just stay with their body. What would you do? I mean, if you didn't really realize what was going on.
The ladies' locker room.
Oh, my God.
That's exactly what I would do.
Of course you would. But, no. So I think there are more spirits in funeral homes than people realize. Some get stuck there. Some get stuck maybe in the hospital or whatever.
Right.
Some hang out in the graveyards. And, of course, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people that do actually move on. Yeah. But there are the few that get stuck. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that there's something going on at the funeral home.
Oh, yeah. A friend of mine used to work in a salon that was right next to a funeral home, and they shared a basement.
Ah!
And the girls always hated having to go down for product because they had a common basement.
Right.
So their stuff would be in the same roughly area as the bodies.
Yes.
So you go down for some designer shampoos and check out whether or not there's any new residents. Yikes.
Yeah, no, not cool.
This is from Rin, and Rin is a regular listener of obviously our podcast and my radio show. She found us through Jim.
Oh,
Revelstoke
cool.
Jim's Canadian content. So I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. The following happened when I was around 4 years old. I was having a nightmare where an insane chef was chasing me around a huge industrial-type kitchen. I'd broken a bowl, and the chef had become enraged. It sounds silly hearing it as an adult and in the light of day, but that kitchen was a maze, and the chef and I were alone. I was a painfully shy kid, and the idea of being alone with a stranger was scary enough without him being crazy and chasing me. I was running and running, looking around stainless steel corners, trying to find a place to hide, all the while hearing the heavy footfalls behind me when someone nudges my shoulder, waking me. There were a huge pair of flower-covered hands coming out of an opening in the wall. It looked like a dumbwaiter with the doors wide open, and they were reaching out for me. I knew they were real because they touched me, and I could smell the flour and the yeast. I started screaming.
Wow.
I screamed as my mother came into the room and turned on the lights. The hands were even more frightening now that the lights were on. The lights shone off the thick red hair on the arms as they stretched and lengthened. It was clear that those hands were going to reach me no matter how far I moved away. I screamed and wouldn't look away from the hands. My mother shook me and forced me to look at her. Until then I could see her only out of the corner of my eye as she came into the room and turned on the light and demanded to know what was wrong. I tried to tell her by pointing at the wall. When I looked back, the hands were gone, and there was only the same old wood-paneled wall.
Wow.
Yeah. Night terror could be the case. I do know that I have a phobia about reaching hands because of this. The end of Carrie was particularly horrifying. As far as I know, there was no trauma leading up to this. Shortly after this, my mother and I moved into 2 newly constructed rooms that she'd built off of the trailer. I don't remember having a nightmare this visceral again while we lived there. What strikes me now is that I don't know where I could have seen such a kitchen in life. This was the mid-1960s in a small town. I guess I could have seen it on TV, but to me at the time, a kitchen was a joyful place full of warmth and cookies. The dumbwaiter was out of nowhere, too. I have a clearer memory of seeing one on TV sometime after this experience and thinking, oh, that's what it was. The memory of that night is as vivid today as it was at the time. I try not to think about it after dark, and never while trying to sleep.
No kidding. See, I would write that off maybe to a dream.
Right.
But the fact that the lingering effects, the hands, stayed that long after waking, because you can make the case for hypnagogic hallucination to a certain point.
Yeah.
Hypnagogic is when you're waking up. But they don't last that long.
No.
Not when someone else is there talking to you.
Mm-mm.
But this isn't the first time I've heard of something like this.
Oh, yeah?
Someone I know told me a story, and in that story, they were in their grandparents' house, and they were being chased by a banshee.
Oh, wow.
And this thing was screaming at them. But the bizarre thing was, they knew they were dreaming and couldn't break out of it. They were both aware of themselves laying in bed and of being chased through the house by this thing.
Wow.
When they woke up, and bear in mind, this thing was screaming at them. When they woke up, their ears were ringing.
Holy shit.
Painfully ringing.
That's creepy and weird.
They got up for, I think, a couple hours, went and had a cigarette.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, though. You try not to think about it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit. I mean, dreams can have all kinds of effects, but that your ears would still be ringing after the fact.
That tells you something.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
This is the second story from Rin, and this actually is reasonably similar to a story we told on, I think, the last episode. So we'll flash back to that at the end. This happened when I was little, but old enough to be in the tub alone a few minutes. Typical Sunday night, taking a bath after spending the day climbing pine trees, and now trying to soak some of the pitch off my arms. If this didn't work, my grandmother would break out the lava soap, and I didn't want that to happen. It's still a gritty cleaner, but back in the day it was like washing with soapy ground glass. I'm sure the tub was filled with toys, but I was making faces in the wide chrome faucet the trailer homes from the 50s enjoyed. I noticed that my mom was watching me from over my shoulder. I turned around to say something to her, but I was alone in the bathroom. I looked back into the faucet to see how I could have been mistaken. My mom's face was still looking at me from over my shoulder, except it wasn't her face. I'd never seen her look so motionless. Before I could react any further, I heard my mom coming down the hall talking to me. I insisted she had been there a second before she had come into the room. She insisted I was seeing my own face. I think we were both wrong.
Wow.
As I've said, I felt safe on the land, but the trailer sometimes had a feeling of occupation when there was no one in sight. Not being watched or threatened, but the promise of possibilities. The person I call not my mom could show up at any time. I still have nightmares that the trailer is haunted and I have to live there for some reason. I know the ghosts are coming, but there's nothing I can do but wait and endure. It is the New England way. And Rin, we talked a little bit about this. I explained to her about my friend, and what happened to my friend, if you haven't listened to the last episode, and if you haven't, shame on you, is that she was cleaning houses in a suburb of Victoria, just outside, and was doing a mirror when she had headphones in listening to a podcast, and all of a sudden there's someone standing behind her, a woman standing behind her in the mirror, and she went, oh, and she jumped, and so she pulled her headphones out to turn around and talk to this person. They were not there.
Yeah.
But maybe 4 feet away from her, there was what looked like she described as the shape of a person, but made out of opaque glass.
Wow, eh?
And then they were there, it was there, and then it faded. Yeah. And, it's just... So Rin, definitely you're not alone. We've talked a little bit about this via email. But the other thing that I'm fascinated by is the fact that the trailer, she still dreams about being in the trailer.
Yeah.
And that they are coming.
Yeah.
I have those dreams about my grandparents' house.
Really?
My grandparents' house is probably one of the happiest places I ever went as a kid. It was, we went there every weekend. We stayed there every Saturday night, my sister and I have so many happy memories there. But I still dream about being alone there and trying to get out before it becomes dark, because when it becomes dark, they come.
Right.
And I have no trauma in that house. Nothing bad ever happened to me there.
Yeah.
Aside from a smack in the face once. I was being a little bastard. Hard to believe, I know.
Yeah, shocking.
But I have these dreams. And I was telling Ren in the email I sent that you haven't seen the movie Crimson Peak, but Crimson Peak is sort of a gothic romance ghost story. And that is something that the director, Guillermo del Toro, I thought nailed, is the feeling of waking up in the middle of the night and knowing they're coming.
Right.
And you can't do anything to stop that.
Wow.
You just wait.
That's crazy.
So thank you for sending those in, Ren.
Yeah, Ren, thank you.
You're definitely not alone. I mean, these are, like I said, this is all data for the machine.
Yeah.
And hearing these things and understanding these things, I think, bring us all closer together.
Absolutely.
This next story is from Melanie B.
I love your show. Thanks for keeping it going. Brennan, your book is in the Seattle Public Library. Ian, why is yours not?
That's because my publisher is American. I think that's why.
Well, your publisher is worldwide.
Yes, that too.
Mine's like mostly BC, and if they push it, Canada-wide. Yeah.
And yet you have made vastly more money selling your book than I have.
Vastly is a relative term.
Well, true, but I mean, we were talking about this before I left for Revelstoke.
Yeah.
I got $1,000 for my advance.
Yeah.
And since then, in actual royalties, I have made, I want to say $550
right.
US.
Yes.
So total on this project, I made $1,500 US.
Right. I got no advance.
You got no advance. However, what was your first check?
$3,300.
You dirty bastard.
And I just got another one.
You motherfucker. But
anyways,
continue.
You mentioned in your latest podcast about possibly doing a haunted hotel episode, and it brought back a memory for me. My father was a minister in Kentucky 25 years ago. He's still a pastor, but out here in the Pacific Northwest now. And one of his parishioners had bought an old 1820s mansion to turn into a bed and breakfast. My dad doesn't usually buy into supernatural things. Of course not. He's a spiritual man. Why would he believe in the paranormal?
Of course.
But these parishioners told him that in the renovations, there was a spot at the bottom of the stairs that had what looked like a blood stain, and that no matter how they cleaned the wood, it kept coming back. I believe they even replaced that bit of flooring, and it just came back. My youth group at the time was invited to come to a hayride there, which I attended, and they gave us a tour of the under-construction B&B. While leaving one of the uncomfortable-feeling rooms, I was the last to file out. And just as I left, a piece of plywood that had been leaning against the wall fell sideways, but not in the way that it would naturally slide down, as if it had been pushed from the back. It scared me to no end. I texted my dad to ask him if he remembered this place from so long ago, having never really talked about it since, and he shocked me by telling me his own experience. He had performed a wedding on the steps of the place and had driven in the previous night. He said he saw a light stroll by several windows from inside that was unnatural. The name of the place way back then was the Mullins Farm, but has now changed hands and is now the Meadowview Farm. I'm curious to know if the new owners have experienced anything paranormal.
Yeah, that would be. I bet that would be an interesting phone call. Because this stuff doesn't seem to go away.
No.
Not when it's like this. I mean, if it's a repeating thing, it eventually peters out.
Well, and even in town here at the Janyon, you remember, I think I actually put this in my book, Victoria's Most Haunted.
Which I read and remember well.
Yeah. But the guy who was the painter, and he'd gone into the Janyon, and he and his friend had said, oh, wouldn't it be great if these walls could speak, kind of thing?
Right.
And as they left, they heard a thump, and they turned around and looked, and there was a brick sitting right in the middle of the room. But they couldn't see where the brick had come from. There was no bricks missing.
Right.
So he picked up the brick and said thank you and took it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that I would do that.
No, I wouldn't.
No.
I don't know.
I'd be like, thank you for your gift, ghosts, but I'm good.
Yep. Peace.
Take care. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get the long
No,
and
he
dusty.
took it home. He took it. He said it was a gift.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough.
Pretty neat.
So thank you for sharing that, Melanie.
Yeah, absolutely.
This next one is from Martha. And I'm not being facetious. I think Martha is such a great name.
Yes.
I like the name Martha. And Martha is one of my favorite Tom Waits songs.
Okay.
It's a very sad song about an old man who calls an old flame of his from when they were young. And she's moved on. She's got a husband and kids. And he tries to make it seem to her that he's moved on too, but he hasn't.
Aww.
And in the third verse, he breaks down. And I love it.
That's sad.
It's beautifully sad.
Wow, you're a twisted.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so this is Martha's story. Martha says, okay, so I mentioned in a previous email that I always seem to experience encounters that seem paranormal. As a kid, I lived in Lufkin, Texas, in a haunted house that happened to be attached to my parents' Mexican food restaurant. They opened it in 1978, and we still have it to this day.
Oh, do you think if we go there, she'll give us free Mexican food?
I'd love that you would go all the way to Texas for free Mexican
absolutely
food.
Would.
The world's richest, cheapest man. The house is still attached to the business, but now it's just office space for me and my dad. Definitely a haunted location. Employees of ours have heard whispers in their ears. Customers have seen shadows and walking down the long hall that leads to the restroom. And as a kid, I remember my parents calling the cops at night thinking someone had broken into the restaurant, and when the police arrived, there was no sign of anyone. There's tons of stories about experiences there, but that's not what this email is about, although I believe it did initiate there.
Cool.
In 2011, my then 3-year-old son would come to work with me. He'd hang out in the restaurant with me or in the back watching television or napping while I worked. It all started when I'd go back to check on him, and I'd clearly hear the sound of 2 little boys talking, having a conversation, if you will. My son's voice being clearly one of the boys, the other voice somewhat muffled. I'd rush in to see who was with him since I knew I'd left him alone, and of course, I'd find him alone. This happened a few times, and each time I'd ask who he was talking to, so he'd point and respond, Han. Han? It's a name I'd never heard before, but keep in mind he's 3, so I wasn't sure if that was even what he was saying. But as time passed and he got older, it was definitely Han. Well, eventually Han came home with us. My son played with his friend all the time. To him, it was totally real. He was seeing this kid. They were playing together.
Wow.
Me and his dad and siblings discussed it, and his dad will always say it's just his imagination, but the rest of us knew better. It was just too real for Joaquin. So much so that at his own birthday party, he went inside leaving friends and gifts and games outside. When I went to look for him, he was playing seemingly alone in his room. I said, Jay, why aren't you outside with your guests? He said, because, Mama, Han is sad that the other kids won't play with him, so he asked me to come inside.
Wow.
Yeah. There are so many little stories like that. Han this, Han that. It never seemed evil or mean, just a kid playing with my son. When we asked what he looked like, he told us he couldn't see his face clearly. It was dark. I'm not going to lie, that scared the crap out of me. Later, he explained it was dark because it was muddy. It was muddy because Han and his sister and their parents were in a muddy lake. His family couldn't swim and died, but he was able to get out of the water, but his face stayed muddy. This coming from a 4-year-old. There were some nights when he'd wake me up and say, Mommy, I can't sleep. Han's shaking my bed to play and I'm too tired. My response was, well, go sleep with your big sister. I don't want Han shaking my bed.
That is so me as a parent.
So this went on until he was 5. I did a little research and found out there was a German work camp during World War II that was on some of our family's property where the restaurant is now. I was always baffled by the name Han. It's a name I'd never heard before. Turns out it's a German name. Makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
One day my son came to me and said Han's mom has been outside the door looking for him. He said Han was hiding because he didn't want to leave, but that he could tell his mom was sad. As a mother, this broke my heart. I mean, I felt that in my bones. So that night I called out to Han, and out loud I said, Han, it's time to go. Your mommy misses you, and it's okay to go with her. Joaquin will be okay. You go and rest. It's time. Believe it or not, that was the end of that. Just like that, he was gone. My son seemed okay with it, and he's now 9 and really has very little memory of it all. But I'll never forget about Han and his friendship with my boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And Nikki has some friends back in the UK, and their son, when he was about that age, he had a little friend who had a Japanese name.
Really?
And it was something like Yukio or something like that, but
yeah.
something would be unusual for a kid that age to pick up.
Well, like Han.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had a caregiver at the time, like a nanny. So they asked the nanny, did you tell him this name? And of course he hadn't. So, I know we talk about kids having invisible friends, but it makes you wonder. So thank you so much for that, Martha. That just a great story. And if we're ever in, well, I'm not sure where you are now.
Lufkin, Texas.
Is she still in Lufkin?
Well, that's where the place is.
Oh, right, of course, yeah. Well, forever out that way. I do like Texas.
And I like free food.
Oh, you're the worst. No more asking for free things. Just read the story.
Yes, sir. Well, now the whole first line is sad.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, no.
That's a great transition.
Yeah.
The ghost story bad people. Jesus.
All right.
Respectful silence.
Respectful silence and
Go.
go. My dad passed away from alcoholism when I was 19. He always used to joke that he was going to haunt me when he died. He kept his promise. The day after he died, I had to go to his house to get some paperwork for the funeral home. While going through his things, the medicine cabinet in his bathroom swung open and then slammed shut so hard it broke the mirror.
Oof.
I hauled ass out of there, smart girl. I went to my mom's house and told her about what had happened. She just brushed it off and said that it was just my dad not to be scared. So the following day, I made my mom go over there with me. While going through his things again, a box fan flew at least 5 feet from behind me and hit me in the leg.
Yikes.
My mom yelled out, "Damn it, Keith, you're dead." After that happened, Mom wouldn't go anywhere in the house without me with her.
That's great.
I had to give her a hard time since she told me that it was just my dad not to be scared.
And I'm so sorry your father passed, Jennifer, but I just love that. Damn it, Keith, you're dead. It's just so definitive. Stop screwing around.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I'm sorry, continue.
My dad was not an angry man, but he was a hermit. I really don't think he knew he was dead, and he just saw me and my mom going through his things and got upset.
Yeah, and I think there's still a strong, once you pass, I mean, what the hell do I know? But I wonder if there's still a strong attachment to things, to your life.
It's your things.
Yeah,
it's
that's
your
it.
Life,
I can absolutely imagine being upset by that.
After about a week of my dad passing, I was at my house and trying to take a nap. My whole life, I've never been able to sleep with my feet under the covers. My dad used to tuck them in to annoy me. Sure enough, right as I was about to fall asleep, I feel my covers lift up and get tucked under my feet. I was the only one home, and I was too scared to open my eyes, so I just said out loud, "Thank you, Dad."
And that's kind of great.
It is kind of great.
I mean, it's sort of a sweet way to say goodbye.
Well, and a very definitive way of knowing it was him.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Even if it's him being kind of a jerk. No, that's lovely. Thank you.
It is really sweet.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. So this is a story that we mentioned at the beginning of the show. We were going to tell it at the end, but we decided to put it in here. This is the ongoing story of Terry. And Terry has moved to Vancouver Island from elsewhere and has been living with friends while their house is being built.
Right. They're living in the basement suite. The friends are living upstairs.
Right.
Yeah.
But they've been having some very unpleasant things happen.
Yes.
Incredibly negative dreams.
Yeah.
Terrible feelings. There's more, but you'll have to listen to past episodes to really get the full scope of it.
Yeah.
Well, their house is finished. I saw some
Yay.
pictures on Instagram. It's gorgeous.
Nice.
But it seems like the move has not been quite the fresh start they'd hoped it would be. So as we'll see. So this is Terry's story. When we first moved into the new house, the atmosphere was very different than at the suite. It was happier, lighter, with no negative feeling. Each time I go back to the suite, I can feel the darkness/negativity again. I also feel like I'm being watched or observed in some fashion. The back of the garage, which leads to the big rock in the basement, along with stairwell, which goes over top of the big rock, still feels very unsettling. I was avoiding the upstairs because of my fear that whatever that this is will follow me to the new place, but I'm not sure yet if this avoidance has worked. For the greater part of the 3 weeks in the new place, I was sleeping very well. But about 3 nights ago, I started dreaming of my deceased family members again. The first night was not too disturbing, but the second night was terrible. In this dream, I was being pursued by 4 entities in the basement of my deceased uncle's home. In my dream, I knew that if they caught me, I would die. The floating figures had white, featureless faces and were tall, but for the most part, they looked like black silhouettes with some sort of fiery white or blue plasma-type flames emanating from them. They looked very much like the entities I dreamt about in the upstairs of our rental house, except these beings were in the house, and not just looking through the windows trying to get in.
Wow.
Once again, I awoke screaming and crying with my husband James trying desperately to wake me. I know he had a very difficult time getting out of this one and was quite disturbed by it. James ran to get me water and ordered me not to go back to sleep again until he came back, so I knew he was freaked out. Once I was out of this dream state, I had to walk around to shake it off, but I was afraid to go back down. This nightmare crap is making me kind of angry.
Yeah, I get that.
Yesterday, I waited until my husband stepped out to take the dog for a walk. I stood in the living room and told whatever it is that has followed me to go back where it came from and that it is not welcome in my house. I strongly stated that this is my home. I never invited it in, and I wanted it to get out. Now, that may sound foolish, I know, standing by myself in my home talking to someone or something I can't see and telling it to go away. Even I felt foolish doing it, but my anger certainly trumped that feeling. And I tell you, I had a good night's sleep last night, so maybe it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I'm done with whatever is trying to invade my space, but I will let you know. By the way, our friend, the owner of the rental property we just moved from, has just told me she actually salted the perimeter of the whole house to keep them out. But now I'm wondering if she didn't just succeed in keeping them in.
Yeah, no kidding. And, you know, I've heard people say that, oh, I felt dumb. And I've said it. Oh, I felt stupid doing that. But
I think we've said that about 8 times this on the show.
But it works. It works. It works. And a lot of times, whatever is driving you crazy, if you're able to tell it to get out, oftentimes it will listen.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we've talked before about the idea of blessing and how sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that it works dependent on your level of belief.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. I don't think it's this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but I don't think it's the power of Jesus.
No.
I think it is the power of your belief.
And it's the energy you put into that declaration.
Yeah,
too.
that too.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sends things away.
Yeah.
What puts up a wall between you and these things, which either they may be strongly negative or just annoying.
Yeah.
But I think that's what does it. The strength of your belief and the amount of energy you put into that declaration.
Well, and how upset you are by it. Like where I'm staying now at my friend's place, she has a friend who lives there, a ghost called Josh.
Oh, really?
And Josh doesn't do a lot. Sometimes we'll be in the living room and he'll be making noises in the kitchen, or we'll be in the kitchen and we're making noises in the living room.
Really?
But in the past, he's done things like turn the TV off or made clinking noises, knock things off shelves. So he's never bothered me. Like he's never accosted me or anything.
Right.
But the first week I was there, he was like, "Who are you?" kind of thing.
Of course,
I could feel that.
Filling you out.
Yeah, but now, he's good.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting.
Well, the idea of the entity following her really caught me because I had an experience like that with my house.
Oh, okay.
Or rather, when I moved out of my mother's house.
Right.
And I've described before the feelings of my mother's, the issues I had when I was living at
You
home.
turned 30. You finally
That's
thought
right.
you'd made
Time
your
to
own
leave the
place. Time to
nest.
go, yeah.
For the record, I moved out when I was 18. Let's be clear.
28.
Yeah, give or take. But I moved out of my mother's house into my first apartment, which was above the store where I worked.
Yeah, right.
And the last couple of years of my mother's house were not great for me in terms of mental health. You know, the end of my high school years were not good. And when I moved from the house to my apartment, my first couple nights were like that. It was so clear and it was great and fancy free.
Yeah.
And I've described before the idea that, I gradually became less comfortable. But what I've never said on the show, because I'd forgotten about it until I read Terry's email, is that I also had a nightmare where something said, "I found you." And it was like
Yikes.
it had followed me there.
Oh, no.
And there were nights when I moved out of the apartment and moved into my own house when I would leave work and I would feel like something followed me home.
Wow.
Yeah. It was
not cool.
No, because the building I worked in took on a real sinister aspect the last few years we were there. Something about I don't know exactly what, but something about the character of the building changed, and it became a much less pleasant place to be. But anyways, so Terry, keep us updated. Thanks for letting us know what's going on, and hopefully that's the end of it. So this next one is from Paula from West Australia, which is pretty cool. Of course, we did our episode number, I forget, I think it's 28 on West Australia.
My name's Paula, and my husband Guy and I purchased a home in the suburb of Helena Valley. It sits at the base of the Perth foothills and is still surrounded by a lot of the original bushland. The house is only 5 years old, practically brand new. It was in a standard-looking suburb and was just a nondescript modern house. The paranormal events started happening when Guy's close friend passed away suddenly. For example, Guy would invite all his friends over for a long gaming nights, and whenever they gathered, odd things would start happening. The doorbell would start chiming around midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. sometimes, until we turned it off due to it being annoying. I always attributed this to his deceased friend, who was a bit cheeky and a prankster type. However, things took a bit of a sinister turn. I had a class every Tuesday evening and wouldn't get home until 11 p.m. or even later. One night after I got home and into bed, Guy confessed that as he was preparing his dinner in the kitchen, he kept hearing a voice in the house. When he would attempt to investigate, the same voice would be calling for him from the other side of the house. He couldn't make out any words except fire, which creeped him out.
That would do it.
Yep. So he turned on some music, and I thought it was pretty creepy too, but we managed to fall asleep. A few hours later, in the early hours of the morning, I woke up to a hammering noise, and Guy was missing. His bedside light was turned on. I got out of bed and unlocked the door to the garage where the noise was coming from. Guy was standing there, freezing cold in his undies, with no memory of getting out of bed or making his way to the garage. He somehow had locked himself in and woke up shivering on the floor.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, that's not good. I decided to do a sage cleanse of the house, including the roof cavity, as the entrance to the roof was in the garage where Guy was found. When we both went up into the roof, we discovered a wrought iron candelabra with obviously burnt candles. Yup, in the ceiling, where no normal person would ever be burning candles.
Oh.
Maybe this was the reference to fire? Needless to say, we were pretty shocked and wondered what the previous owners who built the house had gotten up to. We finished the cleanse, and eventually we moved out after living there for just under 2 years.
Holy smokes.
I'd move too.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that's not good.
You wonder, how recently were they up there?
Yeah.
How recently was someone up there?
Yeah.
Burning friggin' candles.
Not good.
Jesus, yeah, forget ghosts. Open flames scare the hell out of me.
I think fire and secondarily water inside your house are two of the most destructive things.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
What else is there? I guess
I know.
Rats.
Yeah, vermin.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening, Paul, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
This next one is from Jess. Jess says, of all the people I've told this story, only 4 or so believe me, so you can decide for yourself if I was seeing what I thought I was. When I was 11 years old, I had an experience with something paranormal. I don't know exactly what it was, but I knew it was evil. One night I woke in the middle of the night like I usually did, and I had the uncanny sense of something watching me. Now I will say this, I was in my room, and I am an only child, and both my parents were asleep at the time, so they hadn't snuck into my room to check on me. My bed had been next to a window that I usually looked out of in the middle of the night. I lived in an urban neighborhood, and there was a house right across from my window as well as a street light. I look out my window, and I see a black figure next to the tree that is in the yard of that house. The figure had red beady eyes. It also didn't look human. It had rectangular legs with a circle-like body, with beady red eyes in the middle. It sounds very cliche and almost like something you would find on TV with special effects. But I was terrified that whole night because I thought I was seeing something for real. I immediately looked away and closed my curtains. When I woke that morning, I rationalized it as a weird reflection of the streetlight off a window. But when it was around 9:30 p.m. that night, I saw it again. And that's when I studied it a little more, and it moved 2 to 3 feet forward. At that point, I called my mom, who instead of seeing things, felt them. I told her what was going on, and she was alarmed. I asked her if she felt anything over towards that house, and she said she felt something very sad and very angry. My mother was trying to get me to describe it as best as I could, so I looked back over to it, and it was gone. Now, I was very skeptical, and I'd actually gone onto the property and searched it, looking for anything that might have given that kind of reflection. I found nothing after maybe an hour of searching. When I was there, the area was a lot colder than the area around it. I could step away from that spot, and I would suddenly be warmer. So now I thought I was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I shrugged it off, but awoke again in the middle of the night, and there it was, staring at me. Now, I didn't say anything about it to my parents again, simply because I thought it might go away at some point, and during this time, when I brought my mom in to see it, it would disappear, like it was never there. So I waited at least 13 days and told my dad about it, and he hadn't known I was seeing it. I'd actually asked my mom not to tell him. He said that the people who had moved out were very angry, and the house didn't feel right, and told me that I should go command it to go away in the name of Jesus Christ. Now, I knew this would go for one of two ways. It would go away, or it would get angry at me. I commanded it to go away, and it disappeared, and to this day I have never seen it again. What do you think I saw?
Wow.
Honestly, I have no idea.
No.
I couldn't even speculate.
No.
But, again, like we said, I think the commandment to go away has a lot to do with how you do it.
Absolutely.
Has a lot to do with how you command it.
Yeah. Yeah, and doing it like in the name of Jesus, or doing it with sage and sweetgrass, or whatever you're going to do. It's going to be what has the most power for you.
And now this is going to sound like every time someone has a story, I cook up one of my own personal experiences to go with it. But that's not the case. I swear I'm not making this shit up. But This reminded me of something I had forgotten about. I was a kid, and I was in my room at the back of the house. And I remember, I thought it was a dream, and maybe it was, but I remember looking out the window, the back window, and there was like a shadow, something maybe, standing in the yard looking up at me. It's just a standalone memory. That's all I have.
Maybe that's the same thing.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's just, anyways.
Interesting.
Just kind of shook it loose. So thank you for sharing that, Jess. I absolutely believe you. I don't know what you saw, but I have no problem believing that you didn't see it.
Me neither.
This next one is from Tiffany. And Tiffany says, and I also have a story that's similar to this, so
of course
bear with me.
Of course you do.
Tiffany says, I have a pretty crazy ghost story. I'm not sure how to classify this to share. If the topic comes up, feel free to use this. Well, here we are.
Here we are.
My mom died in June of 1995. She was 34. I was 9. At the time of the emergency and of her subsequent death, all details were kept from me. One night, my dad woke my cousin and I up. I thought it was odd, as it was still dark and it was a sleepover. We were rushed to our grandmother's house without being told anything more than, your mom has been in an accident. I have to go pick her up. It was nearly impossible to sleep. I was left there for a couple days with no word of anything.
Oh, jeez.
That must have been horrible.
Yeah.
That last night, I couldn't fall asleep. All of a sudden, what I can only imagine as pure exhaustion, instant sleep, dreaming occurred. In it, my mom visited me and asked me to pick 3 things I wanted to do. Being a kid and from the Motor City, I picked going to Discovery Zone. She promised to go down the slides and play with me. To a Metallica concert. She raised me on metal, and in '95 the Black Album still ruled. Screw the haters. That's still a good album. I don't care what they say. And finally to a Red Wings game. After we did those things, she kneeled in front of me and hugged me. She cried, but then stopped. She told me she had to leave for a while, and that I had to stay with my dad, who was a virtual stranger to me then. She promised I would be okay, even if it was hard at times, and gave me the biggest, realest hug I've ever felt in my life. Now, I'm nearly 33, but oddly enough can't shake or discredit that experience, even though I identify with atheism. That hug is still the biggest I've ever received.
Yeah, no, I believe that.
It turns out that my mother had died of a brain aneurysm. She died in a bar parking lot after a match in Pontiac, Michigan. Efforts were made to revive her on site, but ultimately they failed, and life support was part of the equation from the beginning. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, it's a long time ago, but still, that's hard. Not an easy thing.
No.
But when my grandfather and I were very close, my paternal grandfather, and the night he died, we'd gone up to visit him, and then I'd gone back to my house with I was living on my own at the time, but my family, we all drove together.
Yeah.
I went back to my house, and as I tend to when I'm really upset, I just cleaned. I remember I was obsessively cleaning, and I was. Right. At about 11:30 at night, I was cleaning the banister. My old house had this lovely wooden banister, and all of a sudden, the air went out of me. Just poof! I just dropped. Sat down on the stairs. I was done. Just all of a sudden, I was done. So I left all the cleaning supplies where they were, flicked off the light, went to bed. 30 minutes later, my mother and sister were knocking at my door. My grandfather had died. At
the time when the wind went out of you. Yeah.
And then the thing that specifically reminds me of this is my stepfather passed a few years ago. He was considerably older than my mother, but he was quite fond of my niece, who was, I can't remember how, she was, I want to say about 5 when he passed.
Right.
And they'd had a lot of fun together. He lived on the island, she lived in Revelstoke, but they still saw each other a couple times a year.
Yeah.
So my sister was laying in bed one night, and I may have told this story before, but this has a different context. And she had music on, headphones on, and she figures she must have fallen asleep, because the next thing she knows, she's laying flat on her back in bed. She's got the headphones on, she's hearing music, but through the doorway of her bedroom, she sees a shadow figure coming up the stairs, but she can't move. Next thing she knows, the shadow figure is next to her, and she hears a voice saying, "It's okay, it's not what you think." And then she watched it walk away and across the hallway into my niece's room. Then she fell asleep. Well, the next morning, my niece told her that she'd had a dream that Grandpa had come to her, and they'd done all this stuff together one last time.
Wow.
The only thing I remember is she said they did dishes together. And then he said he had to go.
Oh, my gosh.
So I don't know if that was just a dream, but it sounds very similar.
No, I believe they come back and say goodbye. I know my dad did that with my son. Who was only 18 months at the time. But yeah, it was very real. There was no getting around who it was.
Right.
And at 18 months old, he didn't know enough to pretend or fake or
of course, yeah.
else. So yeah, no, I believe that. I believe they come back and say goodbye, right before they go, kind of thing.
Well, that's an incredible story, Tiffany, and it's really beautiful.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that with us, a couple of goobers like us. All right, so we have one last story. This is a long one.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna hand it over to you, and then we'll jaw about it afterwards.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for this one. This one was pretty amazing, and we got this email and I read it and I was like, wow, because there's so much to this one. In order to fully understand the significance of the numbers 1111 and how they affected my life, I need to give a brief background of events leading up to now. I'm a 34-year-old woman born and raised in London, Ontario by two loving parents. Despite having had a father who was raised Catholic, I was brought up without any religion in my life, and by all accounts considered myself to be an atheist. When I was 6 years old, my birth mother passed away from a rare form of cancer, which she'd been battling for most of my life. I can't imagine how it must have felt being in her shoes, knowing she was leaving behind her two small children. I was lucky enough to have been adopted a few years later by a woman who married my dad and raised my brother and I as her own, and who I am so grateful to call my mom to this day, despite the fact that my dad and her are no longer together. My birth mom and adopted mom actually had the chance to get to know each other, and although I'm sure they didn't start out on the best of terms, became friends before my birth mom eventually passed. It was clear from a conversation between the two of them near the end that my birth mom's main concern was her children, and she wanted to make sure they were taken care of. My adoptive mom took this responsibility very seriously and followed through with her promise to protect us. It was a sacred promise, and our childhood was full of love, and we were always safe and protected. I moved out of my parents' house as a young adult in my mid-teens, and as most newly free and somewhat stupid kids do, I got myself into some questionable situations and went down a poor path. When things got their worst, instead of reaching out for help, I isolated myself from my friends and family. I received a phone call one day from an old friend of my birth mom's who'd babysat me when I was very young. She had moved from London years back and was living in Vietnam with her family. She told me that she was back for a visit and wanted to see me, and for whatever reason I accepted her invitation. She asked me to meet her at my mom's grave, which I thought was strange, but assumed she had planned to visit it while she was in town. Little did I know I was the entire reason for her visit. Once we were there, she told me the real reason why we were together at my mom's grave. In her words, she explained that she'd had a very intense and clear dream where my mom came to her with concerns for my well-being and safety and asked her to check on me to make sure I was okay. I was shocked, to say the least, considering she left her family and traveled over 12,000 kilometers to tell me that, but a part of me, the atheist part of me, just chalked it up as a coincidence. I'm not 100% sure of the timeline, but within that year, I decided to pack my things and start fresh in a new town away from negative influences. I drove across Canada and settled into my new home, where I still reside. My dad had moved here as well a few years prior to my arrival, and when we would get together now and again for lunches or a walk or to play tennis. It took some time still for me to get my shit together and leave behind the baggage from my past. When I finally did, my life got better and better until I was able to consider myself a mature and responsible young adult embarking on the beginning of a promising new career.
I hope to get there one day.
I hope you do too, buddy. I met up with my dad one day for tennis and was introduced to his new girlfriend, who I thought at the time was a little eccentric. After our game was finished, she offered to drive me downtown, which was where I lived. And on the way, she informed me that she had something to tell me, but didn't want me to freak out. She explained that my dad had told her about his past, and of course my birth mom, and that she had had a vision/dream of my mom who'd asked her to give me a message. The message was simply that she was extremely proud of me, short and sweet. It was a little harder to ignore this time, and especially since both times the messages were so relevant. It made me ask myself why I wasn't able to receive these messages from my mom on my own. But then again, as an atheist, maybe, just maybe, I wasn't open enough to receive them. I decided to try and have a more open mind. I said it out loud in case she was listening, and I welcomed her to contact me. I figured it was the least I could do, although the thought of having contact of any kind did sort of scare me a little. For years there was nothing, and then two incidences became a faded story from my past that I rarely thought about or shared with anyone. And now begins the part of my story where my entire belief system and understanding of the world was shattered into a million pieces and my eyes were opened. On an overcast fall day, I was out with some friends on a hiking trip to the West Coast. The two of them, being boyfriend and girlfriend, went off together checking out a cave, and I was nearby taking pictures of the beautiful waterfall. As I did, right in front of my eyes, a white form appeared slowly, hovering over the water. It was more solid in the center and translucent around the edges and tall like a person. I stared, stunned for a minute, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me, and with a shaking hand, I took a picture, and then it vanished the same way that it appeared, slowly fading. I called my friends over, excited and shaking, and told them about my encounter and showed them the picture. Apparently, people are more open-minded than I am because they accepted the story immediately and wanted to try to figure out who or what I'd seen. In my heart, I felt it was my mom, because in any other scenario, I would have hightailed it out of there so fast, most likely screaming along the way. But instead, I felt a calm come over me after the initial excitement wore off. We never did get any answers, but I still have the picture. Now this next thing. I'm not sure exactly the timeline, but I was a couple of years into my new career when a weird thing started happening. It was subtle at first, and I barely even noticed it. Then all of a sudden, it was impossible to ignore. I had been what I thought was randomly seeing numbers on my clock throughout the day. Specifically, 11:11 and 1:11. I barely noticed until one evening in particular when I had to leave my bedroom to get away from the loud snoring of my then boyfriend so I could get a good night's sleep before work in the morning. I noticed that it was 11:11 p.m. I fell asleep and was woken by a cold splash of water across my face when my cat decided to push the cup of water off the table next to me. I most likely cursed my cat and then looked at the clock. It was 1:11 a.m. After this incident, I began to take note, and over the next month, there were so many strange incidences that were similar and just as weird. Here are just a few notable ones. I was showing a client a condo. I'm a realtor. It was a new construction building that was nearly ready for occupancy. When I walked in and looked around, I noticed right away that the stove's time was flashing 11:11. I assumed that was because it was new since the time hadn't been set on it yet, and it was in fact 3 p.m. But as I looked at it, it changed to 11:12 and continued flashing. Another time, my girlfriend and I went out for a walk in her new neighborhood, as we often did. I had sold her the townhome she was living in, and the neighborhood was still very new. When I got to her home, she handed me a letter while she put her shoes on and explained that it had been delivered to her address by mistake and that we'd just hand-delivered on our walk to the other townhomes, which were close by on another street. I looked at the envelope. The address was 111, which, funnily enough, was also the unit number of my friend's home. It just never really meant anything until that moment. Probably the freakiest of all the experiences I had one evening while watching a downloaded movie. As we were nearing the end of the movie, it just stopped on a scene and got stuck. It wouldn't play any further. While my boyfriend went to investigate, I noticed on the bar along the bottom that it was stuck at 111 minutes of the movie time. After a restart, the movie played through all the way to the end without a problem. These things may sound silly and insignificant to you, but I was totally freaked out. I was bombarded everywhere I went with addresses, license plates, and so on. It wasn't as if they weren't there before, but just that I was noticing them everywhere, and I felt like it had to mean something. I took to the internet, like any good premillennial does, and researched the significance of this number. To my complete surprise, before I even completed my search, which was I keep seeing, Google's very first suggestion was 1111, followed by many other consecutive number combinations and suggestions. So apparently I wasn't the only one this was happening to. After hours of research, and to my dismay, the internet didn't have any super solid explanation, nor did it tell me what I was supposed to do. So it was up to me to decipher. One of the things I read was on a numerology page, which I barely recognized as a real thing, which said that seeing 111 or 1111 was a very important message and to pay attention, as it was from someone beyond our world. This one resonated with me, considering my past, so I tried to figure out what the message was and what I was supposed to do with it. I assumed until I got it, I would keep repeating these experiences, and frankly, it was starting to give me anxiety. I'd already changed my life around for the better. I was in a healthy relationship, and my job was going great. So what was I missing? Finally, I came to the conclusion that I would go and see a doctor, since it had probably been 8 to 10 years since I'd actually had a checkup. I went for the works on my first appointment, and not expecting anything to come back from it, went about my regular routine. To my surprise, I got a phone call from my new doctor, explaining I was one stage away from cervical cancer, and that I needed to have more testing, which would be done at the hospital. After a few more tests, it was confirmed, and preparations were made to resolve this before it progressed any further. After some wrangling, I had my procedure and was pronounced out of danger. This is the exact time I stopped seeing these numbers.
Wow. That's a hell of a story.
It's so great, and it's so multi-layered, and I'm really, really glad that she paid attention.
Absolutely. That could have been so bad.
Yeah.
And I know there are skeptics who would say, well, you confirmation bias, right? You look for it, so you see it.
Yeah.
But I think in cases like this, even if that is the case, the end result is the same. So I don't think there's any harm in it being, I think it is a sign.
Yeah, and it prompted her to change her behavior.
Yep.
and go get checked out. And I mean, the fact that it was cancer and her mother had died of cancer.
Of course.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Tanya.
Thank you so much.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I guess that's it. That's it for this batch of listener stories. Thanks to everyone who sent them in, and keep them coming. We have some in the vault that we still haven't used, and we'll hopefully get to those in the future. Maybe every 5 episodes or something, we'll try and slip one of these in there.
Perfect.
The smell of cooking onions seems to have gone.
Good.
That was weird. We didn't mention this on air, but around the time we told Martha's story, we were both just the whole room was filled with the smell of cooking onions.
Yeah.
Which is incredible because there is nowhere in this building to cook.
No.
There is no stove.
No.
There is no...
The windows are closed.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
so
very
that's very strange. Anyways, next up, we're going to take a quick break and come back with some listener mail. Welcome back. So thank you again to everyone who sent in their stories and everyone whose stories we haven't gotten to yet. Thanks to Luke, our researcher, even though he didn't do any research for this episode. That doesn't mean he wasn't working. We had him looking at 2 different subjects, which we ultimately pushed aside in favor of this one. But we will be getting to those soon. So thank you, Luke, for putting up with my crap. Because, and he actually just organized a big old ghost hunt over there in England. I'm kind of curious to see what comes out of that.
Well, there's you can't throw a rock in England without hitting a ghost. So
no
I'm
kidding.
Sure, it was successful.
All right. So, of course, listener stories are listener mail, but we have a couple little messages that were not stories that we just want to share and acknowledge. And so here we go.
Our courteous and efficient staff is on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural elimination needs.
We're ready to believe you.
First up was an email from Latoya, who said that she is visiting Vancouver and hopefully Victoria in August with her parents and son, and asked if Ian will be doing ghostly walks. And, of course, he will be.
Ian will be. Yep.
So hopefully we'll be able to set that up. Latoya is going to be in touch. And you, too, if you are in Victoria during the summer and you want to do a ghost walk and you want to see if Ian is going to be hosting or leading that ghost walk, send us an email. You were actually recognized.
I was, yeah. A family came on the ghost walk, and I asked the lady how many tickets she wanted, and she goes, "Do you have a podcast?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I recognize your voice."
That's fantastic.
That was pretty funny. And then tonight at dinner, the waitress had bought her mother my book for,
of course,
for Christmas. So.
The fruits of local celebrity.
There you go.
We had an email from Casey, and she said we'd sent her some stickers because she bought something from the store.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for you too, dear listener. If you want to buy something from the Ghost Story Guys Threadless store, it's at ghoststoryguys.threadless.com. Let us know, and we will send you a couple stickers as a thank you.
Mm.
We're going to be setting more things up in the Etsy store soon, so more custom stickers, things like that. But these round stickers are only available if you buy something. They'll be free. We'll never sell them. They're just as a thank you.
Nice.
But Casey said she's wondering if we'd heard about the movie Demon House. And I have heard of Demon House. It's, of course, a documentary produced by Zach Baggins. Yeah.
Professional douche.
Oh, I just want to leave the whole Baggins thing behind.
Oh, I love it.
I know.
I love ragging on Baggins. Such an idiot.
Oh, I don't want to define my existence by how much I hate someone. But anyways, so no, I have heard of it. I haven't seen it. I generally don't watch a lot of paranormal documentaries because I feel like most of them kind of gin up suspense. They're trying to make things more dramatic than they need to be. That said, there is one coming out, and keep an eye out for it, Casey. It's called Hunt the Skinwalker.
No.
And it's being released by Jeremy Corbell in September.
Cool.
And Corbell's a researcher who I actually take seriously, and I think the film is going to be worth checking out.
Nice.
So thank you, Casey. We had a message from Rowan, who, of course, we mentioned on a previous episode. I had mentioned that someone who shares the last name of him with him once gave me a ride while I was hitchhiking and supplied me with some herbal supplements, we'll say. So we don't know if they're related, but anyways, thank you for writing in, Rowan. Rin recommended the film Indian Summer, so we're going to check that out. It's a summer camp movie, following on from our summer camp episode. Actually, Lori, who she was listening to the radio show when I did the live show, she said that there are such a thing in the U.S. as summer camps for adults, for people who want to continue having that experience.
Oh, I'm just not a good joiner.
No.
And summer camp is all about like joining together and being a camp family. I mean, I led multiple camps.
Right.
But the idea of going there as an adult is about appealing as signing up for a softball team.
I played on a softball team.
Of course you did. No.
I'm a pretty good first baseman.
Not
thank
for
you.
me. Yeah, that's about as far as you're ever gonna get.
Oh, I set myself up.
Oh
for that.
no, I'm not. I'm not a good joiner. But if that's something you love, and go for it.
She said she's been a couple times, really enjoyed it. So
Good for her.
more
That's
power to you.
awesome.
But
Well, maybe it's not what I'm thinking it is.
Maybe.
Maybe there's some more drinking.
Well, I'd hope so. Teresa from Peculiar Mayhem wrote in, and she was saying that she was joking she needs to pony up for signed physical copies of our books.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, that's right. And she was saying that we joked about us taking a tour and hanging out in our listeners' houses and stealing all the food. She said this should be called the Yoinks Across America Tour, which I think is a pretty great name. Tori says we should do an episode about cop stories.
Yes.
And we're actually working on that.
Yeah.
We're going to start drawing from different sources. We've been sort of primarily using internet resources.
But I work at a police station, right?
There's also this. Yeah, I'm never sure what your boundaries are for work, because I turn up there and you're all stay outside in the car. So
don't get on the cameras. It's bad for everybody.
That's because I'm a. We had a great story from Cherie, and the story she shared with us, unfortunately, we can't share with our listeners. But it was a fantastic. I sound like a jerk. You can't hear it, but it's pretty fantastic. It was a really great story. It was the story of Anyways, but I'm so bad. I'm Italian. We're natural gossips.
Yes,
but thank you, Cherie, for that story. That was pretty cool. It sounds like a transformative experience. We had a message from Samantha, and she says, "My name's Samantha. I'm 16, and I'm from Tennessee." She says, "Don't worry, I hear a lot worse things from the adults in my life, so what y'all say doesn't really faze me."
Well, that's a good thing.
That's good, because, again, the idea of someone under the age of 30 listening to our show terrifies me.
I know.
Yeah. But anyways, she sent us a story, which we are going to share on another upcoming episode. We just sort of worked backwards from some of the things that have been sent us. We didn't have time to get it in. But Samantha, we really appreciate it, and we're going to share that on our show. We had a message from Ava. She said, working on my daughter to write her story of a makeshift Ouija board she made at Whittier College campus. We would love to hear that.
Absolutely.
Ouija board stories always fascinating.
They are terrifying.
Because I'm not really a believer in Ouija boards so much.
I think they can do a lot of harm. And with people with no ill intentions, they can end up causing quite a bit of harm.
Right. Yeah. See, I just haven't had a lot of experience with them, so I would be very curious to hear your daughter's stories.
I've never used one.
Nor I. No. So I look forward to hearing that. And finally, we had a message from Kathy. And Kathy sent us. Kathy's actually really great for sending us some sweet cartoons.
Yep.
And this was one about haunted house realtors, which is of course relevant to Ian because he was house hunting, not we. He was house hunting.
Not we, sweet Jesus.
You wish.
Moving to the homeless shelter.
So thank you to everyone who sent us in messages. If you want to get a hold of us, you can send us messages at ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at LargelyTheTruth or on Instagram, also at LargelyTheTruth. Ian doesn't believe in the internet, so he's on.
I am on Facebook.
You're on Facebook. Yeah, you can find him at Ian Gibbs. Yeah. Of course, Brennan Store. If you want to add us on Facebook, you can. We don't post much publicly, but feel free. If you want to get some Ghost Story Guys swag, you can get that. You can get that at ghoststoryguys.threadless.com. We've got T-shirts. I think we've got some wall hangings. Mm-hmm. We've got all kinds of crap. And if you do buy something, let us know, and we'll send you those stickers as a thank you.
Absolutely.
We also bought some pins, and now I got a bit ahead of myself. I put them up on social media with a quoted shipping price. We're going to have to be a little bit creative with that. So that will be up in our Etsy store soon. The Etsy store, we don't really have a location for that yet in terms of making it easy for people to find, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And we'll repost that on the Facebook page. Yeah. What else do we have coming up?
We got the market night coming up this Thursday.
Of course, Thursday at 7.
Well, we need to be there for 5:30. We probably should talk logistics.
Yeah, we probably should. 2 days out.
And then it's over at 9.
Okay, so we'll be there at the Sydney Night Market from 7 to 9 with the venerable ghost story lady, Barbara Smith.
Yes.
And I will be selling pins.
Yes.
And that's about it right now. But pins. Turns out ordering copies of my book is a real pain in the ass.
We got to figure that out.
Yeah, well.
But I've got copies of my book. which I'm happy to sign for you. Victoria's Most Haunted.
I'll sign it too. That'll increase the value.
Yeah, that's it.
It won't really.
I'm mostly going for the food. That is my whole reason for going out there. So
That's fair. No, I can respect that.
Amazing out there. So.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that so much
yeah.
because I have nothing really to sell. I think I have like one copy of my book left.
Oh my God! I'll see if I can find the one I got from you, and you can sell that one too.
I think it's signed to Dingus or something. I don't know about the resale value of that. That'll be this coming Thursday. So we'll also be there on Thursday, July 19th from 7 to 9, and Thursday, August 30th, the last Thursday night market of the season. And so come by, say hi, watch us eat some food. It's a horrible sight. You'll never want to see us. Maybe don't come by, then I'm thinking, now that I reflect on this. But I'm looking forward to that. I think there'll be a good time.
It'll
Barbara's
be fun.
a lot of fun.
Barbara's awesome.
She's great. So you should definitely come buy some of her books, too, because she's a great author.
Yeah.
And, she's putting up with our crap. That says a lot. Thanks, as always, to Podzontommusic for our fabulous intro and outro music. You can find him online at soundcloud.com/Podzontommusic. If for some reason you want to hear more of my voice, you can find my radio show, Largely the Truth, every week, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on 92.5 StokeFM or via the web at StokeFM.com. It's just a music show. A little bit of talk, whole lot of tunes. Just a fun thing to do. I've had a few people ask me if they can download the shows after the fact. Unfortunately, that's not possible. Because of the licensing restrictions with radio, we can only broadcast it live. But then the show does replay on Sundays at 8 p.m., so there are 2 chances to catch the show. Like I mentioned before, if you want to do a ghostly walk with Ian, just send us an email, ghoststoryguys@gmail.com, and we'll figure out when you're in town and when he's doing it, because he's poor and he needs to do a lot of ghost walks now.
Yeah, it's all over the place. When they need me, I show up.
So, but definitely Thursdays.
Except for not this Thursday because we'll be at the market.
Of course, but other than that, generally Thursdays, and then all over the map.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes.
Right.
That always helps bump the numbers, and I think we've got something like 38 reviews now.
I wish I could see them.
They're on iTunes.
No, I can't get iTunes for whatever reason. Seriously, I know you're looking at me weird, but it doesn't work.
It's like, Granddad, I can't get the internet to work.
I know. What's wrong with this damn remote? Yeah, I know.
Fair enough. Well, again, I'd love to, please rate and review us on iTunes.
Yeah.
Tell your friends. Numbers, again, we're growing, and it's just a lot of fun knowing that we're reaching you folks and you like what we're doing.
Thank you for letting us touch you.
Oh, dear.
Well, you said reaching.
Well, we've had a good run. With that horrifying thought, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and until then, into the darkness we go. Praise Jesus, no teeth. Oh, that's officially the worst thing you've ever said.
Thank you.
Officially the worst thing you've ever said.
That's pretty good, then.
Yeah.
I tried to buy more mini donuts. They weren't there.
They probably went out of business. They're giving away so many fucking mini donuts.
I had to go down to the Inner Harbor and get tourist mini donuts.
Oh, gasp.
Very disappointing. I'll give you a taste of the back of my hand.
Sometimes I'd like to. Nuts. Hello. Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh my God, stop. All
Junction, what's your function?
No. Done.
Just don't look me in the eyes. It throws my game off.
Something of that nature.
Say that. You can't say that. Jesus. Oh, that one. Not the local celebrity of fruits.
That was awesome. That was so great. You've got to keep that in.